right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us at today's panel. We're going to try tackle or answer the question, well, we're going to look at the intersection of crypto and AI and try answer the question of whether it's a fad or whether it is the future. I want to give some context for today's panel about why we're talking about this sort of thing, being a gaming fund. And it's quite interesting. Being a gaming fund, we have this privileged front row seat at a lot of gaming studios and developers working at the frontiers of technology. Typically, devs and studios knew about NVIDIA long before it was a household name. GPUs were harnessed for their their multi-core processing power to simulate physical environments, long before they were used to train AI models. Devs typically were early users of the GPT-1s and 2s before it became a bit more mainstream. Procedural generation gave us a hint about what neural radiance fields would look like, or Gen AI models, whereas even bots in Warcraft farming gold for you just gives you a bit of a taste of what agents could look like in the crypto AI world. And having a focus on crypto as a gaming fund, we took an early bet on a technology where we've seen behaviors occurring in the gaming space already. Users were trading digital goods and desired ownership of these digital goods. These users are typically terminally online users that form part of these kind of digital societies. And these users are typically early adopters of just new frontier technologies. So now we find ourselves at this pretty interesting intersection of crypto and AI. And there's this wonderful Peter Thiel quote where he says, crypto is kind of, you can think of it as capitalist because of its kind of self-sovereignty and the nature, this like libertarian nature that it has to it. And AI is kind of communist in ideology, because it's this collectivist appropriation of data. And now here we are on a panel trying to discuss how these ideologies are going to mix together, which I think is quite a sort of tricky one. So we've got our expert panelists here today. I'm going to hand it over to you guys just to introduce yourselves, and we're going to try dive into this question. So go ahead, Trevor.
Hey, everybody. My name's Trevor. I'm from Render Network. Render Network is the largest network in the world of distributed consumer GPUs. It was founded by artists, for artists. Today, it runs thousands of rendering and AI jobs in parallel at a fraction of the time and cost. We were founded by a company called Otoy that really set the yardstick for the first commercial use case for the GPU in rendering. And it's been amazing to watch it evolve from rendering to become rendering and AI, a very important second use case for the GPU.
Hey guys, Karan here. I'd say I'm the co-founder CEO of Mira. We're one of the younger companies in the crypto AI space, but I think we're founded on the vision that there's this entire centralizing force that exists in AI, and we believe that crypto economic primitives allow you to build really high quality sovereign tech in a space that's becoming a lot more controlled by a few companies. Our focus is actually on building interesting tools interesting primitives across the supply chain that focus on kind of handing power and control of these tools back to the user. Currently, we work on a bunch of different frameworks, including agents, models, and workflows, and are in the process of building really important, I'd say, evaluation criteria that allow us to be more sovereign in the future.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Anand. I'm an investor, focused on early stage investments, mostly, almost exclusively focused on this weird intersection.
Awesome, yeah. So I'll start with you, Anand. You've been one of the kind of key evangelists of the space, one of the early investors. Let's start off just for the audience's sake. Why does crypto need AI? Why does AI need crypto? Why is there this intersection happening?
Yeah, at some point in the last 2 years, it became just like extremely evident that a lot of the primitives, because in crypto we love to talk about infrastructure, right? Like everything kind of starts from the ground up.
Yeah.
And we've been building so much infrastructure for so many years, and when to to Karan's point, when you start to look at sort of this blast radius of issues that are starting to crop up in the world of centralized AI, it felt like there are going to be just natural use cases for all these primitives that have been built for the last 10 years. Maybe more so prescient, like in the last 4 years, if you would look at some of the technologies that's come out, it was like, all right, I think the time is now. So it felt like a natural marriage where crypto can support AI. I mean, just like simplistic things, right? Like we talk a lot about, I'll pick on just one specific example here. Like Meta's models, like Llama, for example, is like, it's a very popular model with a lot of developers. They love the fact it's open weights. They can use it pervasively, and you don't have this hangover effect of using OpenAI or other sort of centralized entities. The reality is that like we actually don't know where this data that Llama's models are trained on come from. And the natural evolution is that it's coming from Facebook, right? Like, or WhatsApp or Instagram, which is a lot of our data. And of course, then we start to see deals that are being struck between Google and Reddit, OpenAI and Reddit. And then then you start to think about, oh, wait a second, this thing called data provenance that exists in blockchains. Like this is a primitive we've had for a long time. Can we build infrastructure to support users providing their data more systematically, right? So this is just like one case in point of like where we can support the AI workflow across the stack. But this started to become evident. And again, it's very, very early to Karan's point. I think we haven't really gotten there yet. We're starting to unpack this. There's a lot more work to do. So this is where crypto can support AI. And of course, if you just think about like the AI economy and like how it's going to boost every single thing we do. I mean, just coming over here, my Waymo, I was reading, I was like, oh, we need to get better radiologists. They need to be better supported by AI, right? Like every single field is going to get boosted by AI. It's inevitable that AI supporting crypto is not going to become a thing. So in both these ways, it just felt like, it's a rising tide situation. I think we're all going to win.
Yeah. Karan, last night we were speaking about that scale AI story related to data provenance. You just want to tell that and kind of add to Anand's point.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of any API, it's an arbitrary endpoint, right? You're trusting whoever's on the other side to deliver the information that you need. And you already see issues with that, right? Some model providers say that they're giving X model, but actually they're serving Y model and making arbitrage on the gains. Or sometimes, even more importantly, in case of evaluations, which kind of define your AI system, you don't want to be in a place where someone's kind of giving you an evaluation output that's like not true or fraudulent, or even just like, like lazy compared to what you would expect. So in Scale AI, for example, last year what they found was when
who is Scale AI? What do they do?
Oh, sorry, my bad. Scale AI is this big behemoth in the AI space. It started as a data labeling company, but now it basically does everything data related to training, fine-tuning models. Every big AI lab works with it. If you've ever used AI, you've touched Scale AI's work in some capacity. So they're a very entrenched incumbent in terms of what's happening in the AI space. But last year, it recently came out that while Meta was kind of fine-tuning some of their chatbots built on Llama, they had a contract with Scale AI saying, can you give us annotations on some data sets that we need to fine-tune our models? And the SLAs say, of course, you need humans to do this, right? That's why you're paying Scale AI money. But Scale AI was just using GPT-4 to do those annotations. So in that case, you're basically creeping the bias of one model into the other model, which is extremely dangerous, because if you can do that inadvertently, you can also do that maliciously. So what systems exist to prevent that beyond like a contract SLA? I think that's where blockchain primitives become super useful.
Amazing.
Can I be contrarian there a little?
Love it.
I don't know if centralized AI really needs crypto as much as we talk about it. In fact, they've done everything not to use crypto. When you look at how models were trained and how services are delivered, I think really the battle is more from a consumer and from a content owner perspective. And it's open source versus closed source in that. When you look at these models, once they're trained, the genie is really out. There's very little you can do. There's billions of parameters. You can't pull your data and have a meaningful impact on that. But what we are seeing is a real shift in folks wanting a better ownership of their data that's used in these models. And to do that, it has to be done in a public, decentralized way. And when you think public and decentralized, for me, some of the best examples are crypto, Bitcoin really being one. So I see it as a movement that has not yet embraced crypto, but really needs to if it's going to be done the right way in an open source way.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Is that like a threat to the business model? I speak to AI researchers and operators in the non-native sort of crypto field, and they see a move from Stability AI's Imad Mostak sort of moving into the crypto space as kind of selling out or just kind of looking down upon it. Do you feel that? Do you get a sense of that, or why do you think there is this bifurcation?
Yeah, maybe I can start. I think, so I have experience with this because I come from a very AI native, Web 2 native fund, and my bosses, they still ask me, why are you doing this crypto AI stuff, right? But, and they were the lead investors in Scale AI's last round, but that's a different story. But I think the interesting question there is, yes, they do things. See, crypto is yet to prove itself on a lot of things. And AI also, I'd say, it has more visceral PMF in terms of you can taste and feel a lot of these things. But how I think about crypto primitives is, it's more of an insurance policy, right? The risk is, it might be janky, it might be more friction, but the risk of not having it in certain use cases is a lot higher than the cost of actually putting it in. And you realize this, people didn't realize stablecoins were important till the Venezuelan government was debanking people, right? Or stuff like that. So you don't realize these things matter until suddenly they do. Yeah. And that's I think the view you should take of a lot of these things, because open source is in itself hard, and open source in itself is not really capitalistic. And to be successful in any platform shift, you have to be ruthlessly capitalistic. Crypto for the first time brings capitalist primitives into the open source world that lets them compete. May not be in training models because it has this, and yeah, a lot of cool companies like Prime Intellect and stuff doing things on training, but just coordinating resources and giving users the ability to own a lot of the resources that they're kind of contributing is going to be important.
Yeah, you touched on decentralized training, Anand. I know you've looked at the space with a kind of 30,000-foot view. Could you talk about some other sectors that are interesting in the space? There is a market map that friends of the fund, Casey Caruso, has sort of pushed out that is quite exhaustive. Feel free to pick any interesting sectors over there. I know you've invested in a couple of really cool companies like, I think, Jensen and Ritual. Could you just talk a little bit about what they do? We've spoken about data provenance and sort of crypto's benefit there. I think we get that. What other sectors are interesting to you?
Yeah, the learning for me as a first-time investor is that, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I don't invest on things that are on a market map. So the best things to look for are when they're not on a market map. Yeah. Those have been the best investments. There's some companies here that showed up when there was no market map, right? Yeah, I think that's the way to think about it. But I think if you look forward, the areas that I think are particularly exciting are, yes, there's still a lot to unpack when it comes to data. There's very here and now, there's, even when we talk about the utility of AI, going back to your previous question, why are we getting so much pushback from AI researchers on the utility of crypto? Honestly, I think this is warranted, right? We have kind of dug our own grave here. Yeah. And I think in some ways it's deserved, in a lot of ways, because we haven't really built anything that's crossed its chasm in terms of mainstream utility, right? So just on that point, I can tell you that top of mind for a lot of companies, including self-driving companies or companies that are doing, enterprise search at scale, companies like Glean, privacy and security is very top of mind for these entities, right? To your point, the trust factor when it comes to using, a closed source model. Yeah. And what is being done with your data when you have to provide it for inference or when it's being used in a RAG-like environment. These are questions that are coming up now that are starting to become very interesting. So I'm really excited about that as an opportunity zone because they're an opportunity set. But I'm kind of veering from your question. Yeah, we've invested across the stack. It felt like training is here and now. There's about, I was just doing this my own internal sort of cataloging of where we are, but there's 13 different sort of research attempts at distributed training in the last 5 years, right? And I think we're it sounds like we're inching and getting there. You've probably been closer to this than most. On-chain inference,
Can you just define inference for the crowd?
Yeah, it's basically the touch point. You provide a prompt, it provides a response. That's the most tangible experience of inference that you've probably all experienced today. But yeah, I'm not trying to shill our companies per se, but it's been across the stack. But I think there's opportunities in security and privacy and data. I do think that the next 6 months, we really don't have any cohesion when it comes to what agents really mean. I think we all kind of pull things together, like, oh, this is what we think an agent needs to look like, but like the proliferation of agents hasn't really happened yet. And I'm very excited to see that kind of take off, actually.
Quick on agents, defining it for the audience again, because crypto
Yeah.
has a lot of sort of jargon
No.
and lingo, and it's very, we're used to it, but just for everyone's benefit.
Yeah, there's again, like I think between us, there might not be consensus here, but agents are, I mean, let's use like a real world analog. It's like you have a travel agent, right? Like someone who basically you give a set of instructions to and they kind of execute the task for you. And then the analog for that with large language models or a mixture of these is that like you don't have to do this in sort of a one-off manner with prompts one at a time. It kind of like takes a task and kind of delivers a response for you in a very reliable way.
So for me on large language models, training is really better done centralized. You've got billions of parameters. You need to have available memory and networking between these devices that makes sense in a centralized infrastructure. Now that's started changing. You saw Distro, a paper come out quite recently that had an exponential reduction in the communication between nodes. But we're
Just for the audience, can you sort of define, like, why is there's this distributed training sort of paradigm and why is it good?
Quite simply, on training, you have so many parameters you're trying to load into the model to train that it's very hard to do on a decentralized distributed basis, right? But that actually flips when you think about inference. And what inference is really just running the model.
Yeah.
And on the inference side, when Stability AI came out, I think it was 33, 35 gigs. Over a couple of weeks to months, it became something you could run locally on your cell phone. And so you see a natural progression in these models to where that fits a decentralized architecture really well. But probably the biggest recent change was, for me, when OpenAI brought out their paper on O1. They showed there was actually a point in learning on the training side where they'd really maxed out. And what they moved towards is what they call test-based learning, which is running inference on a problem in parallel. And why that's so interesting to us is because those are problems that you can kind of set it and forget it, that work really well on distributed networks where you have a swarm of different people working on the same problem. And because it's inference, it's not a massive problem for them to download and too many parameters for them to run on memory. Yep. It's something that can be done in that distributed swarm way. So the way I see this is there are many, many opportunities here, but really you've got to find the opportunities that fit the current state of the market, where jobs that are being run, particularly decentralized, need to be done almost on an offline basis, like we do rendering.
Yes.
And instead of real time. And if you're looking to do things more real time, if you're looking to do things more centralized training, then I think you're looking in the wrong spot right now. And that may well change as this evolves, because it does change so significantly week to week.
Yeah. That distributed training, in terms of the benefits of it and a kind of decentralized paradigm, what are the key value propositions of that for people working with these things? Is it speed? Is it cost? Is it kind of trustlessness in some way? How do you think about that? Question open to the floor.
Yeah, I can take a crack at this. I've been working on something because I've been, just from my very naive point of view, I needed to understand this a lot better. So I've been trying to distill this down in an Eli 5 kind of format. And the crux of it is but just to counter to your point, right? When it comes to frontier models, I agree with you. I do not think that we can beat what centralized entities are going to be able to pull off. It's just not going to happen. However, I think for a vast majority, that is kind of where we are, right? We have frontier models, and then we have a long tail of stuff on Hugging Face. We need to be able to get to training, fine-tuning, pre-training and fine-tuning in ways in which we just haven't had access before. And there is a compromise that researchers, academics, startups here maybe are willing to make just to be able to get access to pre-train, fine-tune without having to commit to 7 figures and spend. And you know this better than us, right? So I think that's go ahead.
No, that's perfect. Any other thoughts? Good. I wanted to touch on another sector very quickly. The render network started off in the compute space. Could you just crypto's really good at coordinating stuff. Could you kind of define that, give a bit about your history, and then what are you doing now?
So we started just to solve a real problem we had. One of our investors, this is at Otoy, was Madison Square Gardens. We were helping them do a render, and we were trying to do the render using the public cloud. And doing the calculation, it would have taken all of Amazon's West Coast GPU compute 6 months to deliver this project. And it was just a no-no. We needed to get it done in 3 months. So it made us step back, and the real opportunity for us was the enterprise model that NVIDIA had led to a bifurcation in the market where there's an absolute glut of consumer GPUs, but an absolute shortage of enterprise GPUs. So we turned our attention to the enterprise side. And the lucky thing for us is rendering is typically of animations, and animations are in frames per second, 24 frames per second for a movie. So they were kind of naturally set to a distributed model where we send each frame out to a different node. And that was the onset of the render network. It scaled fantastically, but I'd say what we got wrong at the start was crypto models were really not designed to incent users in the way they are today. And about a year and a half ago, our community voted to change our model completely to a more modern model, closer to many of the deep-in projects you see today. And that's allowed us to allocate resources across the network in a much more efficient way. It's allowed us to open up new business model lines like AI and allowing partners to write to us. And it has allowed us to really scale on the back of crypto as a means of incenting individuals who want to contribute to a decentralized project in a way that just was not possible 5 years ago when we started this.
Yeah, amazing.
On the compute side, I have like an interesting take here is people always talk about how we're reaching like a top in like compute demand, supply and stuff. But I feel the genie's out of the bottle now. Like if you assume AI is going to be here, compute's always going to be needed. Like right now we're bottlenecked on, like we were talking about this, right? We're bottlenecked on like human in the loop and human minutes and a bunch of stuff. You as those things go away, like the velocity of inference is just going to keep rising. And now with like O1 saying that inference scaling laws exist and stuff, I feel like it's always going to be a shortage. And figuring out how to constantly acquire and coordinate new sources of compute is going to be a very important business, regardless of like whether it's centralized or decentralized. And I think decentralized ways are going to be like a very interesting way of doing it.
Well, the one stat I had is there are about 6 million GPUs in the public cloud with the hyperscalers. There are 1.5 billion GPUs worldwide outside of that. Those 1.5 billion are not all performant, but very much a subset of those, and multiples more than 6 million are available for AI and for rendering should many of these problems be solved. So the opportunity is there, and I think the need is there. It's a question of bridging the chasm.
Amazing. Just in the interest of time, guys, just a question. What's a view or opinion on the space that you hold that you think a lot of other people disagree with you on? And feel free to get spicy and controversial here.
I'm not really a fan of ZK Sync.
Can you define? There's a couple of other haters here.
Well, there are good use cases.
Can you define it first?
ZK Sync is an encryption technique that's quite popular in crypto at the moment. I think for a client side, if it were used for identity and not needing to update state, I think it works really well. But where I see crypto trying to use it a lot at the moment, it's trying to use it in a different server-side way. And for me, the cost to perform that is just staggering, and it becomes a time issue. So I'm quite hopeful other primitives like homomorphic or others come to the fore. But I'm definitely anti-ZK.
What is homomorphic encryption?
It's a different type of encryption, one that is end-to-end, so on the data being trained. And what that means is, therefore, you have state stored. You have the ability to do a lot more than you can with a very much slice in time that you get from ZKs. I do think there are ZK use cases, but I'm much less so on many of them that I see today.
Spicy. Anyone else?
I think my hot take is like, as a founder building in the space, it's always a struggle for legitimacy. I feel like slapping AI into anything in crypto and calling it crypto AI is pretty easy to do. And it's even easier because nobody really understands AI beyond something. And you can a lot of projects have tried to do that. And you can make it sound legitimate, but you know at the back, like as a builder in the space, it isn't. And it's hard for us as founders to if I was building this as like a YC-backed company, no one would ask you and say, are you a scam? Right? They'll just be like, yeah, there's a YC company building something interesting. So that fight for legitimacy is tricky. But I'd say, there are the hot take is I feel that there's going to be there's going to be a black swan event in AI, and there's going to be like something in the crypto space that either exists that solves it, or you'll realize that this is why it really matters in the next 3 years.
Any guesses on what that black swan event might be? I mean, is it like geopolitical sort of?
No, I think it's just going to be like, some sort of training data injection that's gone wrong, or some sort of evaluation data set that's gone wrong that causes some big issue somewhere in the world.
Just while we're sticking with you, Karan, do you just want to give an overview, just quickly on the Mira network? I know you gave an introduction, but we had an interesting conversation last night about how you benchmark these models and all of these kind of open and closed source models, and how you work with them.
Yeah, and evaluation doesn't sit on this market map, so I'm gonna keep an eye for that. But I think so. The question we keep asking for ourselves at Mira is like, why is block space important for anyone building an AI? Like, where does extrinsic demand come beyond like the traditional use cases of smart contracts and speculation and financial services? And the real value there for us has been that, so when we've been building our AI apps for a while now, right? And we have a lot of users, but the issue is models hallucinate, and you have humans in the loop today to kind of protect against that. But to really have like agents at scale and all these things really come to life, we really need to figure out how to go from like 80%, 90% accuracy to like closer to 98, 99%, right? And evaluations play a big part in that. Like, how do you give feedback to your systems to make them more robust, more efficient, and a bunch of these things? And evaluations today are either, all of them are focused on quality measurement and not quality control. So the things we've been up to at Mira is basically, can we use block space and use consensus systems that crypto has kind of built out for LLMs to actually act as automated evaluators? And we've seen some really interesting research breakthroughs there of having LLMs as judges. This is based on a paper that Google DeepMind put out a year ago. But having LLMs as judges really work together to reach consensus and output. And that becomes like this trustless auditing system for your AI output. Because a lot of people focus on input parameters, like instructions, prompts, data sets. Not enough people focus on the output parameters, because that itself is like a different beast in itself. So at Mira, we've been focusing on how do you create trustless evals. Just like, you can do evals through a centralized entity. But just like how you can bank with a bank, but also bank on Ethereum, and there's value in banking on Ethereum because of the trustless nature of the transactions. I believe there's also value in doing trustless evals where you have a lot more transparency into what the eval system really looks like.
And just to sort of play devil's advocate, why trustless evaluation? I'm sure people have seen on Twitter that, I don't know, pick a model sort of surpassed the SAT score or did really well in a PhD exam. Like, that seems like a good enough evaluation, no?
So let's put it this way, right? Have you seen SWE Bench? It's like the benchmark for like a software agent. The issue, like, it works, like you might have an agent that performs really well on SWE Bench, but does it work well on your code base? Does it work well within your code base on a particular repository, right? You can always go into edge cases, because the design space is infinite. So evaluations need to become a lot more like end-use centric versus like broad-based, because broad-based lets you compare, but like everyone who's used AI here knows, like, it's a vibe check. Like, people still use trial and error no matter how many like evals exist, right? So how do you build more trustless evaluations that can go as narrow as possible? And there's a quote here from Brett Taylor, who's like the chairman of OpenAI. He says that software is moving from rule-based to agentic systems that are goal and guardrail-based, right? Yep. And for that, you just need to have good goals, and you need to figure out how to keep narrowing your guardrails, because otherwise you're just going to have super inefficient systems.
Yeah, amazing. And I know investors sort of need to be quite friendly to other people in the ecosystem, but any spicy takes or views you have that others disagree with you on?
I don't know if this is one that people disagree on, but I constantly think about the fact that this might be the last jobs we all will ever have, right? Like, and I'm not a doomer. I'm not trying to say that like AGI is going to kill everyone, but I do think that we need to operate with this mindset that whatever, like, at least for me, and I've been in this industry for quite some time. I think of this as the last thing that I'll ever do, and it feels like AI is going to rewrite the rules for engagement pretty substantially. And using that as sort of a mantra, it just forces me to prioritize the kind of things I look at, the kind of things I want to engage in. And for founders and others, like, those are the kind of people that I want to partner with. So it's a spicy take in that, we're moving at a pace that is sort of unprecedented, that I've really never seen. And I've been in, I think I was talking to these guys here, like, I've been in software for 25 years, and this is kind of nuts, kind of what we're able to do today. So trying to stay ahead of this is going to be fascinating.
I want to open it up to the floor. If there are any questions, feel free. Mr. Cotton, I know that you're involved in this space. So If there are any others, feel free.
So it seems pretty obvious to me that crypto, for instance, can be used to align incentives to pay people contributing to the Rinder network. Yep. That is a natural use case of crypto in finance. I'm very curious what thoughts we have about agents. Just open thoughts on how crypto aligns with agents.
The question is how crypto aligns with agents.
I don't see it very different from models. It's just an additional level of functionality on what's going to be run on a GPU. And it's going to need GPU power to run it. And that comes down to core incentives on GPU power that I think you see a lot of people out here chasing and doing a good job of meeting.
For me, it's I think if you just look at the stack, everything from TCP, IP, HTTP, REST, this has been constructed for an API-driven world that we live in today. If I want to use an Uber, I call the app. The app's using some services architecture in the back end. This was meant for the internet era, circa 2023, right? 2024, 2025 onwards. If the goal, and by the way, OpenAI is working on a device now. Assumptions are that it's going to be largely voice-driven, agentic in nature. The modality of communication between what we consider to be LLMs today, which are largely non-deterministic, they can hallucinate a lot, things like this. First of all, that's going to change an underlying. So I don't disagree they're not going to run on GPUs, but the way agents interact with one another for us to perform certain tasks, I think is going to look vastly different. And I don't even know if it's going to be on the traditional stack that we're used to and we're familiar with. Where that meets crypto is, I hope it's a part of the fabric on which agents are built, because we're not just talking about naturally just attracting or extracting information. We're talking about intelligence here. So making it auditable, verifiable, secure, sovereign. I think all these things should be first principles that we should start to build with today, as opposed to making it an afterthought. So more wishful thinking on my part there.
Yeah, I think it's mainly about having verifiability of actions, because these things are going to have they're agents, right? They're going to have agency. They can do things on your behalf. So how do you verify what they do exists? Because if they can do things on your behalf, they can also obfuscate what they're doing. So you need sovereign systems and I'd say verifiable proof technology to make sure that you can actually validate all the stuff and audit all the stuff that they're doing. So I think that's where it becomes more important. There's this take that agents are going to use crypto to pay. I don't really buy it. If they can use crypto to pay, they can just use a bank account. No one's going to change that. But I feel verifiability of agentic actions is an open space not too many people talk about.
Kind of a follow-up related to that is, I think, an unexplored area is the legal liability of large language models when they do something that causes damage, and the legal liability of the data that went into that model, if in fact it's the data, not the model, that caused the damage, and the attribution of all of that, who is liable, is a meaningful risk, and does crypto have a role and to do the attribution, right? Because just briefly, Google was sued in Germany for autocomplete, where it autocompleted that somebody was a Nazi. They weren't a Nazi, but it was defamatory. And they won, and Google was pissed. They were like, I can't believe we lost this case, because the implications are vast. I mean, this is a primitive version of an LLM, the autocomplete. So the precedent's been set, and I feel like crypto might have a very powerful role to play in representations, warranties, legal risks or liabilities, because this stuff is going to get litigated left, right, and center as soon as it breaks something important, litigation.
Yeah,
For the audience, I should have given you the microphone, but the question is on the legal liability of LLMs and what role crypto has to play in that.
So I read this story recently where some travel company, some airline company put a random chatbot agent on their front page.
In Canada.
Yeah, in Canada. And basically someone just and you can always hack the prompts, right? And you can kind of make them do things you want. So someone just made the LLM give an output that, yeah, you can get 100% refund because you missed your flight or something. And it was admissible in court because now the company had to give it a refund. So how do you get these agentic actors to operate in a way that doesn't have any backlash towards you? And how do you audit the stuff that they've done? Because right now it's still preliminary, right? It's just chat interfaces. How do you track actions, and not just one action, but the chain of actions that ends up happening? So I think just having proof of all those things is super valuable.
Yeah, I'll just say this is a request for startup. I think the idea around what insurance and liability looks like in this world is going to look drastically different. I'm just not saying ML for insurance companies, but specifically when it comes to inference, if a radiologist is going to misread, a report, it's going to have drastic, interesting consequences. Yeah.
I don't know how you do it. I really don't, because there's so many billions of parameters in these. To point back to one is just about impossible. I mean, the model takes so much time to train. To actually find how much weight went into that data source is impossible. So I don't know. It's very black box. I don't know how it's solved.
Good. I think we'll end it there, guys. I think you can see, we can really go down the rabbit hole here. And I think we definitely can at about 6 p.m. if you want to join us upstairs for a drink. So please give it up for our panelists today.